but shit.
Good evening, everyone. It's
Hi. Whoopsie.
going live is difficult, but we're glad to see y'all. Hello, Sky, Jane, Melissa.
Hmm.
Good to see the fam back together again.
I'm falling
Okay,
apart already.
we are glad to be with you. Hope y'all are having a good Saturday.
Falling apart already.
Had a good
Why?
weekend.
Okay, hang on. I got issues. Let
We
me.
are glad to be. Yeah, your earphones are not connected. Y'all, I think probably this week I'll try to get Ellen and have a computer class with her. Now she's freezing some. Are you good? All right. Well, y'all give me some good news while we're waiting for Ellen to figure out how to work the computer. Trying to think. Here we've been getting rain all day. Hadn't had any rain in 2 weeks. We've been getting rain all day. It's kind of nice to have some rain finally. Looks like we'll be getting it for 2 or 3 days. There's kind of a low or something parked off the coast.
2 weeks. We've been getting rain all day. It's kind of nice to have some
Yeah,
rain.
that doesn't work.
Like we'll be getting it for 2 or 3 days. There's kind of a low or something parked off the coast.
I'm going to kill your microphone until you can get the Bluetooth connected.
I already did kill it. I think it's on your side.
Get the Bluetooth connected.
Moffat, it is connected.
All right, hold on. It's not coming through my speakers though.
I think it's on your side.
All right.
Do you have a window open for YouTube?
Nope. All right, hold on. I'm
And
going to
are
mute you.
your earbuds in?
Ellen, I'm going to mute you, then I'm going to talk, see if I hear you. All right. Yeah, we appreciate your patience while we're trying to get all this figured out, but I'm not hearing any feedback when I mute Ellen's mic, so it's coming through Ellen's computer. Did you get all that? Ellen? Well, there goes Ellen. I think she's going to try to restart and see if that works. So, hello, Erwin. Hello, James. Good to see y'all. Got my earbuds in, just Bluetooth's connected. We're just doing all sorts of fabulous here tonight. Ellen will be back with us shortly. She's having technical difficulties, and WAP is still the rule. Anybody remember what WAP is from times past? WAP is short. I think it actually comes from another show. We Are Professionals. There was a song out that kind of killed the use of that to some degree, but anyway, it is a beautiful night, and sun's kind of setting. Got a nice little kind of orange glow outside. It's cool. Wind's been blowing. Had some rain today, but we needed it. It's been a good day. Hope y'all's has been as well. Now tonight, kind of a different little presentation. Stocks, gold, and WTF. It was a fairly significant week in the market. This week promises more of the same. And so we're going to talk about some of that tonight. I think E-Train is about to join us again. Did you restart everything?
Yes, although I already did earlier. Are we good?
So far, no problem. That sounds
Okay.
better.
That was weird.
We will keep our fingers crossed. Technology is great when it works. And admittedly, we've had some weird little issues with StreamYard. Some of it's probably our doing. Some of it I honestly think is not.
I think it's just a little bit of fuckery sometimes. I don't understand. I don't know how many of these you've been through, because I was delayed a bit.
No, haven't really been through any of them. So,
Okay,
Jane,
well,
warm and
Scott.
sunny here in Pennsylvania, but I'm hoping the rain heads this way. Probably will. I think it is northbound. And Sky, no good news here. I hope that's not bad news. James trying to give you a subtle hint, Ellen, as to what you need to do.
Wow, that was really that was great, Clay.
Get your earbuds in. And then Erwin.
Nothing is working on my side. I don't know why.
Is this delay legal grounds for termination of your commercial agreement, even if verbal?
Yeah, he will fire me in 2 seconds. Like, he's like, get out, go. He just said, go to Jane's. Get out of here. If y'all missed that.
Yeah, I missed that actually. When did that happen?
You just said Jane's giving you a hint.
James Brown. Okay, here's the message.
Jane is giving you a hint.
No, James is giving you a hint to put your earbuds in, is what I said.
They're in. Okay. I'm a little behind here.
What do you call the ear doctor?
Moffat.
James.
I'm still lagging. I think it's you though, because mine's quicker. My speed is faster than yours on my computer.
Yeah, but I'm not lagging.
I think you do it just to irritate me. I don't remember WAP. I remember Wham. Hell yeah, Ram. Wham.
Those were the dudes that lip synced.
No, this was George Michael and his thing.
Yeah, I thought they lip synced.
No, that was the black guys that did the
Billy Manilli.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay. Wham, Billy Manilli, they're all the same.
Milli Vanilli, not Billy Manilli.
Willy nilly. I was close.
Whatever. Yeah, train. And Erwin, I will rep you for free. Thank you, Erwin. I may have to call you up on that one, or ask for you and your lovely wife to take me in for a little bit and the dogs.
Erwin, just keep in mind, just a few minutes ago, she was making something up entirely that I said and running with it. So
what?
I don't know if that's the kind of case you want to have.
I'm only looking at 4 screens trying to keep up with everything going on, and then I had a 5-second delay and also hearing everything we were doing. It was really weird.
That's all right. We're all here now.
Yeah, Milli Vanilli.
Yep.
They blamed it on the rain. I don't know if Clay knows that reference, but yeah, that was one of their songs.
Ellen was a wonderful guest in my home.
Mm-hmm.
She is not altogether horrible as a guest.
That is actually an incredible compliment from Clay, to say it not altogether horrible.
Yeah, that's about as good as it gets.
Yeah. I look so weird. Like I'm watching myself in real time and then 5 seconds later in slow motion. It's very bizarre.
Yeah, Erwin, I guess I'll withdraw my offer soon.
Why? I might need your representation, Erwin. I might need a good attorney.
I think it's, what is it? Mentis competus?
Moffat. And here come the Ellen jokes.
You got to have torts that are demonstrable, provable, some actual damage, not just completely imagined. That's all right, though. Elle and I give each other grief routinely,
Like all the time.
like all the time.
All right, I'm going to switch my camera because I can't. This is weird. Hang on.
Check and see if it is the camera. So let's go ahead and talk about, this past week and what's possibly going to happen in the future, not necessarily week by week. But let's try to make some sense of the market mysteries that have been, kind of popping up, the puzzles that keep people awake at night, right? Well, today we're going to talk about one of the biggest questions swirling in financial circles. And that is, how exactly does the Federal Reserve's decision to cut interest rates impact the market? I mean, we know it sent ripples across the various markets, stock, bond, gold, Bitcoin, whatever, internationally as well. So the stock market is acting like it just got an invitation to a party where they're not really sure whether they ought to be celebrating or in a panic. Just depends on the day. The Federal Reserve obviously announced they were going to cut interest rates. They meet Wednesday. The market is kind of predicting, if you look at Fed funds futures, it looks like they're predicting kind of a 0.5 point cut. Well, some of that I'm not so sure of. So that's kind of what we'll talk about and look at through as we go through tonight. So grab a scotch and we'll see what history, logic, and a bit of common sense tell us about some of the weird market moves. And when I say, weird market moves, gold was up, bonds were down, market was up, oil was down. So let's see if we can't kind of figure out where all this fits in together and where it's headed.
Is that any better?
Give it a second. It seems to be better.
Good.
The lag is gone. So do you think it was the camera maybe? I don't know.
Yeah, it's that Logitech camera, which I can do mediation, but oh, no, you couldn't. No, we'll kill each other first. I promise you that. I promise you that. Ain't gonna happen.
She's not as ornery as she appears on the air sometimes.
Unless you really just, I gotta move my lights and everything now. Unless you just really want to get in the middle of like a brawl. We are like the angriest brother and sister ever on the planet. So there's that.
See, and I would not describe us as that.
I mean, brothers and sisters love each other, but there are moments when it's just like, okay. My brother used to beat my butt like on the daily.
Okay.
No, you and Kim didn't fight?
No.
Really?
No, we had a little squabbles, but nothing major.
Oh, he would punch me and throw me on the ground and push me into the rocks in the driveway. And yeah, that was, yeah. Anyway. All right. Stocks, gold. Yeah, it's all crazy.
All right. Well, go ahead and grab a scotch or whatever your favorite beverage is. And we'll take a look at the market puzzles. Got to start off with the puppet master. Obviously, the Federal Reserve, or the Fed, as we kind of affectionately refer to it. Think of the Fed as kind of the ultimate parent with an unlimited size piggy bank, handing out allowances or withholding them just whenever its whimsy strikes. And you can kind of,
obviously, the Federal Reserve
did it again. Sorry.
It's all right. you can also consider the Fed to be like the wizard behind the curtain, pulling the strings with some great uncertainty as to the consequences that string pulling will incur. The Fed tries to tweak interest rates, and keep in mind, interest rates are the cost of money. Money has a cost. That's why interest rates are important. If money is cheap, it's easier to spend, it's easier to borrow, it's easier to invest, all those kind of things. If it's more expensive, obviously the opposite. So the Fed tweaks the interest rates, the cost of money, to try to either speed up or slow down the economy. And sometimes it doesn't work the way they wanted or intended. Now, to kind of elaborate on that a little bit, lower interest rates make borrowing cheaper. So everyone from businesses to your neighbor with a midlife crisis, can take out a loan at a cheaper price. Loans are more available. The hope is that consumers will. And the activity, that borrowing activity, that spending activity, that supposedly new investment will spur economic growth. But like I say, it doesn't always work out that way, because remember, after the subprime crisis, the Fed cut rates, I mean, near to zero. And nobody was buying houses, because if you remember in 2009, 10, 11, 12, people were still scared about losing their jobs. It's like, I could offer my students $1 million loan at 3%, which would be incredibly cheap. But none of them would take it. None of them would take it and build a house, because they have no way to afford the $6,000-$7,000 a month payment. Even if they have a job, it's probably not paying that much. And secondly, they're not sure how long they'll have the job. So
Fair enough.
you can't, the old adage is you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. And that's kind of where the Fed is. It can cut rates down incredibly low, but that's not necessarily going to spur additional investment the way the Fed wants.
Erwin.
If people spend more on stuff like homes, home prices will go up, especially if supply does not increase. Exactly. People forget about supply and demand, but it's always a rule, always a law. And the same thing with money. The supply of money. Money has a supply and demand function.
Mm-hmm.
To where if the Fed is increasing the supply greatly, that lowers the value of the money. And if the Fed is lowering the price, the cost of that money, that in addition cheapens it. So that's the balance the Fed has to walk, trying to stimulate the economy while not stirring up inflation. It's part of their dual mandate. Their dual mandate is to keep inflation low and employment high. And in a lot of ways, those two are diametrically opposed to each other. They're contradicting standards.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the Fed, on the flip side, the Fed will try to hike rates if the economy looks like it's taking off, because a rapidly growing economy will normally produce inflation, as the increase in jobs and income and salaries grows faster than production. You have more people wanting more stuff, and that causes inflation. So
But
the
also,
Fed tries. Go
but
ahead.
also doesn't an extreme amount of debt by the federal government, that also obviously causes inflation.
Yeah, and low interest rates,
Mm-hmm.
in a sense, encourage more federal borrowing, because the interest they pay, appears so low. Their interest expense stays relatively low.
You got to help me out here,
Okay.
because if the economy is doing well, people are making money, jobs are good, and if people aren't making money, jobs aren't good, but the government is overspending, both cause inflation.
Well, the government spending,
Mm-hmm.
the way the government raises money is either through taxes or borrowing.
Mm-hmm.
If they tax people, they take money from individuals, and then the federal government spends it. Well, part of the from viewing just that side, the federal government is an inefficient spender.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't use the capital to its highest and best use. It uses it for political expediency.
And always has.
Always has. And so its spending is inefficient. And there is an argument that that can contribute to inflation because the money is being focused on inefficient goods, wasteful goods,
Mm-hmm.
wasteful parts of the economy that there isn't the demand for, like green energy. We just talked a few weeks ago how the state of New York signed a contract with 2 windmill farms to provide electricity to the New York grid. And those windmill farms are going to charge New York, I think it was an average of $170 or $180 per megawatt. Well, currently, New York is spending $35 a megawatt to generate energy using coal and natural gas. So their energy costs, their raw energy cost, for that volume increased 5 times. That's right. Inflation. And that's what government spending does. Not always to that degree, but that's a nice example.
Okay, so I'm going to take a little bit, hang on,
go ahead.
That one a little bit further. When you have windmills and the windmills break down and you have to replace the blades, what happens to the blades, Clay?
Oh, don't get me started on windmills. I absolutely hate windmills. There is absolutely zero redeeming value in windmills.
Agreed.
The environmental impact, gather in the generator, in the engine, whatever you want to call it, it uses rare earth materials. Well, mining those rare earth materials leaves behind radioactive and toxic waste. So
and hurts the people who are mining it.
You've got the environmental damage there. You've got the health damage to the people mining it. Secondly, the people mining it are slaves, Uyghur slaves in China. I have problems buying products that encourages slavery. Secondly, the environmental impact of constructing the windmill. Some of those, like the blades for own land, are up to 200 feet long. And building those, transporting those is a ton of energy. Mounting them, building the windmill, building the foundation is just a ton of environmental impact. The windmills themselves consume a lot of oil. Each windmill will use several thousand gallons of oil a year in lubrication, and it has to be changed every year. The windmills obviously are an inconsistent power source. Germany is now tearing down some windmill fields because they built them on coal mining fields, and they need to access the coal because their energy has become so unreliable and so expensive. So they're tearing down windmills they just built a few years ago in order to mine coal. Obviously, when the tax credits run out on windmills, they oftentimes aren't repaired or maintained because they are just not efficient sources of energy. That's why the private market will not build one without government subsidy and or tax incentives. Putting them offshore. There's some evidence that it causes damage to right whales. Windmills on land and offshore kill endangered species, eagles, for example, and pelicans. Pelicans aren't endangered, but I like damn pelicans. They're a cool bird. I'll be sitting there on the beach watching them, and they'll be, flying around. All of a sudden, they'll dive into the ocean. And I'm like, get you some. I love damn pelicans. Windmills chop the hell out of them. So, and I could go on about windmills. There's just no logical reason on earth to support windmills, especially
Okay.
the
I
fat
bet
pelican.
you know this human.
I know this human. How you doing,
Yeah.
Julian? Good to see you, man. And for those of you who don't understand the joke, the fat pelican, is
A bar.
probably the greatest dive bar on the East Coast. It is a hole in the wall, and it's just a great place. And so when I have students come into town or have a free night, I'll meet a lot of them there. Former
Yeah, and
students.
they
Let
put a lot
me
of
clarify. Former students.
former students, yes, and they put
Yeah.
a lot of like old carnival equipment or rides pieces of them in the bar. It's kind of fun. It's cute. And
Yeah.
I'm sorry I had to get up. Tallulah, it's storming, and she was freaking out, so
Not a
I had to
problem.
grab the baby.
Take care of the baby. But yeah, the fat pea, it's got a tractor trailer cooler backed up against one wall, and you go in that tractor trailer and pick out, your can. They've got 300 or 400 different types of beer, bottle, cans, whatever in there. And then inside it's a little dark, it's kind of like an old pub with the beams and everything, but it's got old signs and pictures, and people autograph every inch of the inside. Then the outside, whenever a business fails, they buy the sign or some of the swings. They've got little fire pits. They've got little cornhole game. They've got a boat back there in the back. They've converted into like a little sitting place, a bar, an old hot tub.
Yep.
It's just got a mix of a little bit of everything, except for a 57 Chevy pickup. It's the only thing I haven't seen there. But it is a cool place. Gotta love those damn pelicans. I do. I think they're cool as hell. Eagle's my favorite bird by far.
Mm-hmm.
But pelicans, I love pelicans. Yeah, they're just cool. Now, seagulls, you can have all those you want.
And we like dogs and cats. Don't eat them, please.
Yeah, don't eat them. Stay in
Julian,
rice for 2 months starting in October. We'll have to meet up soon. I'd love to do it. I'll buy you a beer and you can buy me a scotch.
have I met this human? I can't remember.
I don't know. I don't
I've
think
met
so.
quite a few. Okay.
Yeah. I don't know if you have, honestly. I kind of lose track.
Julian can tell you because he's seeing my face. I can't see his. I'm better with faces than names.
So appreciate you saying hey, man. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
So the puppet master, I kind of picture the Fed as like a conductor, sometimes who gets a little mad, who gets frustrated, who anybody ever known or dated somebody that was in the symphony or orchestra?
Yes.
Not a conductor, but one of the musicians. They have kind of a different side to tell. And to me, the funny thing is that none of them actually pay attention to the conductor, all of his gyrations and movements and, waving, because they are so skilled in their art. They know these songs front, back, sideways, forward, and they know the tempo that, the particular music calls for. So they're just playing. They're just doing their thing. They don't really follow the conductor. And so that's why the music keeps playing if the conductor stumbles or trips or, whatever. He picks the music, he hands out the sheet music, the tempo or whatever. He may try to rearrange some of it in practice, but once the show's going on, they're like on automatic. So that's kind of like the Fed. The Fed tries to, appear like it influences, and there are times when the Fed is the 800-pound gorilla in the room. There are other times when the pressures in the market are so great that the Fed has to follow along, not lead. And that was the way it was in the 80s and the 90s. the Fed really wasn't leading interest rate policy. It was following what the market was dictating. Of course, back then, there was no real concept of the Fed spending trillions, growing its balance sheet by trillions in order to influence and pressure the market. It's a new world.
I'm
So let's
sorry.
take a look.
I'm having to make Tallulah a bed on my desk. There you go, honey.
She's a sweet girl. And she wants to be held. She's a little high maintenance, but she's normally kind of chill once she's, being held or close to you.
Yes, she wanted to get like in the top and the bottom underneath this and make a little nest. So I gave her a couple blankets and she should be good. Because I'm retarded.
That's all right. And
Yeah.
I just want to deny the rumors that, at the Haitian refugee camp a couple miles from here, I've been posting Tallulah's picture.
You, Clay Moffat, I will kick your butt.
All right, let's start off talking with gold. Gold has been kind of historically the ultimate kind of break glass in an emergency asset. It's like the survival bunker of finance. The reason gold is up now is simple, very simple. One word: uncertainty. Uncertainty is risk. And gold is kind of like the perennial escape artist of the financial world, the Houdini of assets, if you will. It's an escape from what would be otherwise riskier assets. Gold, after all, generates no cash. It doesn't pay a dividend. It doesn't pay any interest. But in times of economic flux, it gleams with the products of stability. And let's face it, in a world where currencies, are losing value overnight, every night, just a tiny bit of glittering certainty goes a long way. So you can see, looking at this graph, that gold was pretty much dead for 20, 30 years. From really about 1980 to 2005 or 6, it was lifeless. And then the subprime crisis started heating up and gold took on a new life.
Oh, the subprime, that was fun.
Pardon?
The subprime, that was fun.
Oh, yeah. That was, depending on how you were positioned, that was actually entertaining or absolutely miserable. And also during this time, with all the chaos in the subprime markets, the few years after that, with interest rates being driven down to zero or near zero, the dollar was crashing. You had obviously low interest rates. International debt issues contributed to the rise of the price of gold. Things kind of taper off in 17, 18, 19, and then COVID hits, and then inflation hits. The dollar starts collapsing again. You have soaring U.S. government debt. So yay, gold. As you can tell, it's had a hell of a rise past few years. It's almost gone vertical. People turn to gold when everything else goes to hell. When things seem shaky, things like wars start up, when there's economic slowdowns, severe economic slowdowns, or hell, I don't know, the realization that avocado toast may have ruined a whole generation's housing prospects. I don't know. You've never heard of avocado toast?
Yeah, but how the hell does that affect anything?
It's kind of a cheesy metaphor.
Sorry.
So gold is up, gaining kind of renewed interest, renewed sexiness. I wasn't necessarily a believer in it a little while back because, for 30 years it had been lifeless, even with, inflation and certain risk going on. 9/11 didn't phase it. The dot-com bubble didn't phase it. The 95 crisis didn't phase it. But subprime crisis, for whatever reason, brought it to life. Let's turn to oil.
Wait. We got to get back to gold.
Go back to gold.
Because you said that it's just a thing. It's just a... Sorry, reading chats too. That it's just like anything else. Like it doesn't have any actual value unless you put value on it.
What I argue is anything that's valued is a matter of perception. For example, the dollar. Will people kill for the dollar? For a bunch of dollars?
They have.
They have. They do. They will. So it's hard, when people say the dollar is worthless or of no value, to me, if somebody will kill for it, that's probably the biggest test of value. Now, gold for 30 years, people were looking at it like, it's kind of nice in jewelry. But as far as the investment side, nobody was interested. Nobody wanted it. It just sat at, $300-$400 for decades.
Right.
Not a whole lot of interest. So,
but it's not. It's just a perspective.
It's just perspective. And perspective has apparently changed. You can look at the graph and tell, yep, perspective has changed.
But does that change your perspective?
It's, I go with whatever works. People ask, about my investment philosophy. And my investment philosophy is simply one thing: opportunity. And,
true.
Whatever is hot in the market, whatever is good in the market changes from year to year, decade to decade. And so I've seen, portfolio managers get stuck just hunting for their one particular piece of the puzzle that fits their paradigm.
Right.
And I don't have a fixed paradigm. I just look for things that are obscenely cheap or have an obscenely big future ahead.
Okay.
And that's where I have historically always sought to invest my money. So
I actually, asked you about this because I had a couple people message me about the fact that they saw people around them that were, especially the boomers, no offense, because you are one, but selling off their stocks and buying gold. How do you feel about that? Because that's clearly where some of this recent height in value is coming from.
Well, when I try to determine where I want to invest, I'm looking at the future. I'm trying to think, where are all the trends? Where are the risks? Where are the opportunities?
Mm-hmm.
And as I've been covering on the show for, the last 6 months, to me, the opportunities have been somewhat dwindling with the exception of AI. There's really not a whole lot of economic opportunity out there. Retail's crashing, energy's crashing, manufacturing's crashing, going down the list. Service, is starting to shuck. So you've got that economic reality. Jobs are being lost. We'll talk about that a little bit more. And then, we'll also, talk about this a little bit. You've got increasing global conflict. This week, Blinken is supposed to announce, according to reports, Blinken is supposed to announce that the U.S. will allow Ukraine to use U.S. missiles to attack deep inside Russian territory.
Okay.
Now, honestly, if we were at war with Mexico, for whatever reason, say, they wanted Texas back, and we were, defending Texas or, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And they started launching missiles at Chicago, LA, Atlanta,
Right.
DC, missiles supplied by Russia, who knowingly gave them the missiles and what they would use them for.
Who would you go after?
Yeah,
Russia.
exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. We would be pissed.
Yep.
Yeah. And so if, Ukraine uses the missiles to attack, cities and sites deep in Russia, not on the battlefront, that's a whole different game. And I don't think Russia is just going to sit idly by and take it.
Nope.
And I think DC, I think the administration, I think NATO knows this. And I'm like wondering in my mind, what the hell is going on? I can't answer that question. But if
They've
I
got enough
look,
nukes to take us out with China. So
yeah, that we are forcing them and China into a tighter and tighter alliance.
and we keep doing it. And it's the dumbest thing ever. Why can't we just keep Ukraine out of NATO? We promised we wouldn't go one more inch, and here we are. And now the entire U.S. is in trouble.
So, if you were Russia, what would you do? I would probably start attacking some of the NATO stores, some of the depots where they stored this missile, some of the shipments where they're bringing in the missiles, shoot the planes down, attack the ships, whatever. And then see if NATO wanted to escalate that.
And if I were Jane, I'd go ahead and buy that land and invite your
Tennessee.
friend Ellen to come on over. Just saying. Suggestion.
So anyway, getting back, the economy is definitely slowing down. Most sectors are getting hit relatively severely. Some increase in international violence, war looks highly possible. So in that environment, would I consider investing in gold? Yeah, I would. Now, does that mean war will happen, that Blinken will make the announcement? Does, whatever? No. So the crystal ball is never perfect. But, if you look at the trends and follow the trends and invest accordingly, you're going to have a pretty damn high hit rate. 70, 80, maybe 90% sometimes. Some years, some decades, some will be worse, some will be better. But anytime you can have an investment hit ratio better than 55%, 60%, you're doing extremely well. You're not going to hit them all. And you're not going to time them all perfectly.
True.
But the goal is to put the odds in your favor. And I believe, and I've seen consistently, over the past 40 decades. I'm a boomer, remember that. That's not that old.
Man.
That it works. That it is a successful way to invest. It takes a lot of work, takes a lot of time. You got to just consume knowledge like a banshee. But I enjoy doing that. And that's part of what I try to, share on the show. Not that I am advising anybody in how to invest. I just tell you what I do and what I think. And so right now, gold looks a whole lot more attractive to me than it did a year ago. Melissa coming in defense of the avocado toast.
Yes.
And I will actually eat some avocado toast on occasion.
Now, I got to ask you, when you say avocado toast, I'm thinking toast made or bread made out of avocado.
No, it's just bread with avocado slices on it.
Oh, okay. That's different.
Maybe. The goose who laid the golden avocado.
Well, maybe they would be spared in Ohio if they would start laying avocados. I don't know. There's a chance.
Yeah, there's pictures coming out now of some of the Haitian grills with multiple cats on it. I mean, people who argue it doesn't happen. I don't know how frequent, but
It is definitely happening.
yeah, people are saying that the public lakes and parks, the geese and the ducks are gone now.
Yep.
Um,
And they do voodoo, and you have to have cat bones and
yeah.
such to do those things.
They eat those things in their culture, which they're only a few months, a year removed from. So I seriously doubt they've changed their whole diet, dietary and cultural habits. What's the extent of it? I don't know. Is it occurring? Yes. Gold, just a thing. It is just a thing, but
Oh,
depending on how people perceive it, I've always held that the only true metal that has value in and out most any season, not necessarily is lead, particularly in the form of high speed pills,
pills. Okay, we'll go with that.
freedom pills. But
I'm all about that.
yeah, if shit hits the fan, that's the kind of metal that everybody's going to wish they owned. Jane, you can't eat gold. I personally don't see it as valuable.
Oh, honey, you do. You know why it is. Let's not go there.
That's okay. And I haven't for years. Like I say, I go wherever the opportunity is, wherever I see the opportunity. And the past little while I have seen increasing opportunity in gold. Now, how long that's going to last? Unfortunately, I think it'll probably be a while. But who knows? 2-3 months from now, I could have a entirely different opinion if things change in the world and in the economy.
There you go.
Avocado, edible. Gold, wearable.
Okay, Linda's calling me, and she knows I'm on, so let me.
Okay. Yeah, Linda is a neighbor. So knowing what she knows we're on the air. If she's calling, it might be something important. So hopefully not. And E-Train will be with us shortly. Jane, I just have a feeling it's a passing fancy and then it's going to crash down. That's very possible. To me, it depends on what all goes on with the economy and with the Ukrainian war, with, federal spending and debt. And we'll talk about, some of the issues with federal spending and debt as we go through the show. In fact, let me go ahead and get to some of that. Oil. Let's look at oil for a second. Oil is essentially, the coffee to the Monday morning of the economy. When one is off, the other follows suit. It's basically the lifeblood of the global economy. Energy, cheap energy. Now, lower rates often signal that the economy is slowing down. The Fed, usually when it starts cutting rates, it's because it is seeing some damage to the economy occurring, and they want to try to soften it, so they'll lower rates. Well, the softening economy generally means that there's less demand for energy. Imagine the world economy is a giant machine. If it's not running at full speed, it doesn't need as much oil to keep it going. And keep in mind that, the lower rates are kind of synonymous with less demand for energy. And so therein lies a paradox. The paradox is that while rate cuts weaken the dollar, because you think of, the Fed's interest rate as the return on the dollar to foreign investors. Cliff notes. If the interest rate is lower, that means foreign investors earn less. So they're going to demand fewer dollars. it lowers the value of the dollar. It lowers the return on dollar-denominated assets. Well, oil is a dollar-denominated asset, or has been historically. So when the US dollar is strong, you need fewer dollars to buy a barrel of oil. When the dollar is weak, the price of oil is higher. Hope that makes sense. The drop in demand for oil, however, is more than compensating for the drop in the value of the dollar. So drop in the value of the dollar, oil price ought to be higher. But overall demand is dropping faster, so that net causes a bigger drop in the price of oil. A big factor in all of this, global economy slowing down, is China. China's economy is tanking. We've talked about it repeatedly. You've got weak consumer demand. Their whole real estate sector is crushed. It's hurting demand and growth. So for now, oil is in the pits. As you can tell in this graph, oil hit a peak in probably 22, got up to $120 a barrel. There were some issues. Remember, the Ukrainian war started. Ukraine was a big oil exporter, and so the war, plus there were some things domestically that encouraged higher prices of oil, indicating that we weren't going to be a long-term player in carbon fuels. And you've seen the price kind of bounce around, but lately, over the past year, you've seen a relatively steady decline in the price of oil, kind of going along with the decline in the economy, the slowing economic growth. And forget GDP. Just absolutely forget GDP. It is useless as an indicator for determining what's going on in the economy anymore. Government spending has taken such a large part of it. The private sector is screwed. Private sector numbers have been pretty bad. Most of the growth in the GDP is due to increases in government spending, both in terms of direct government spending and then like healthcare, which is largely, government funded. Now you'll notice oil prices have dropped over the past year despite OPEC and Russia trying to cut production some, which they both need the money. But they were hoping to try to force higher prices to support higher prices. There are other countries now producing oil, like Venezuela and some others, who are desperate for cash. So they're still producing as much as they can. If we look at oil production, you can tell the severe drop in COVID, and it kind of rebounded, but it still is not at the pre-COVID production levels. And in fact, it has dropped really since the start of the year. Since probably the fourth quarter of last year, the middle of the fourth quarter last year, oil production is down. That has not helped protect the price. The cut in production has not bolstered the price. So the U.S., in terms of being an oil producer, I don't know how many of you track that monthly or look at the numbers. Now, it grew last year, and I thought it was kind of interesting in that the administration was taking credit for record U.S. oil production, when the simple fact is they have opposed it at every step. When Biden was elected in November, oil companies had a lot of potential leasing sites that potential drilling sites that they leased from the government, but they weren't necessarily ready to drill. Well, they started flooding the Department of Energy with drilling permit requests. And so there for the first 2 or 3, 4 months, the Department of Energy was approving thousands of these requests for new drilling sites and rigs. Well, the administration finally gets its people in and cuts that off. Literally by July or August, approvals for drilling permits were zero, had been cut to virtually zero. Also, leases in the Gulf, in Alaska, in certain other areas had been rescinded. You all know the Keystone Pipeline was canceled. There were 2 other pipelines that were canceled. So the administration was sending very strong signals. They did not want carbon fuel development. They didn't want more oil or drilling. Well, the flip side is, having approved all of these drilling permits, the oil and energy companies, particularly with oil going to such a high price, 120 a barrel, started drilling and started setting up new rigs. So that's what generated the increase in production. However, if you look at the number of rigs in service each month, they've been declining almost every month for a year. And this, as a rig, goes past its serviceable life, they're not replacing it, they're not repairing it. As it becomes unproductive, they're closing them down and not replacing it. So the number of rigs has been steadily declining in the US for a year. That will ultimately kill our oil production because it takes years to acquire the lease, do the impact studies, get the permit, acquire the equipment, move it, start drilling, and start pumping the oil, and then develop the conveyance to ship it to wherever. So enjoy the good times. Hope that gives you a little bit better understanding of oil. Yen, we talked about the yen rising or strengthening over the past several months, and this shows the yen to the dollar. Now, if you're not familiar with currency, this is the number of yen. This graph is denominated in the number of yen to buy $1. Now, back in July, it was over 160. Well, that has fallen to, as of Friday, 140. So as you can tell, the yen has strengthened, 20-ish percent. That's pretty damn strong in a month or two. And why are people buying yen assets? Well, historically, the yen is kind of a cool currency is in the financial world. It's unassuming. It's very reliable. It's kind of the Zen master of currencies. Whenever uncertainty looms, investors have been drawn to it historically, kind of like, those seeking peace are drawn to a Zen garden. So what makes the yen appealing now, particularly in this current climate of U.S. rate cuts? Well, we talked about the yen carry trade a month ago, how the Bank of Japan, BOJ, in order to stabilize the currency, because you can tell it was spiking up pretty high. In order to stabilize the currency, they hiked interest rates. Remember, interest rates are the price of money, and think of the interest rate, domestic interest rate on the currency, as the rate that investors receive. So the higher that interest rate, the more they receive, the more attractive that currency is, the more they want to buy yen-denominated assets. So the more people buy assets, the higher the price goes. Well, if you look at the graph, it takes fewer and fewer yen to buy the same dollar. So that is the price, the value of the yen increasing, strengthening. Does that make sense? If y'all have any questions or I say something that's confusing, let me know, please. So the yen's been looking like a more attractive option. As the U.S. is cutting rates, Bank of Japan is hiking rates. Also, in the unwinding of the yen carry trade, they were dumping a lot of U.S. assets. Welcome back.
Good Everything's fine. She actually butt dialed me. So, with Linda, I'm like, okay, if she's calling me now, it's an emergency.
Yeah. We're glad it was nothing serious.
Well, yeah, me too. And then I got a bite of tuna to eat because I forgot to eat today. Jane.
Yes, we already handled that.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry. Yeah, Ellen's back, so y'all can start asking questions again. She's good at handling them. Sometimes I get lost in thought.
No, I'm just sorry. I had to. Yeah. Anyway.
So the unwinding of the yen carry trade, you remember we were talking about the Bank of Japan was also encouraging Japanese investors to sell U.S. bonds, U.S. denominated assets, and buy Japanese bonds. Well, indications are they've started doing that. As their U.S. bonds mature, they're not reinvesting in U.S. bonds. The lowering U.S. interest rates makes them less attractive. The increase in Japanese bonds makes them more attractive. Plus, Japan has a very, very strong national culture. You know, the people love their country, they love their culture, and they're very respectful of the government. So if the government asks or tells them to do something, they are much more apt to do it than, for example, we would be. And so a lot of the Japanese investors are following along, and you'll continue to see that. Particularly, you'll see it possibly in another rather momentous event if the Bank of Japan hikes rates again in December or January. I'm kind of leaning toward January, but we'll probably see more of that yen carry trade unwind. And depending on who you listen to or where you get the information from, there's still a big chunk of yen carry trade in position. Don't know exactly, can't get good data, but pretty damn certain if the Bank of Japan hikes rates again, you're going to see another asset dump of U.S. assets. Hope that helps. So the yen historically is kind of seen as a safe haven currency. Japan historically has been a low inflation, relatively stable economy. Now in the 80s, it was fast growing. Since the 90s, it's been kind of flat. But sometimes if you're worried about risk in other countries or other currencies, stable is good. So the yen is seen as a little bit of a safe haven, kind of a calm amidst the storm of the market. Used to be everybody wanted to go to treasuries, but now that's changed a lot in the past 3, 4, 5 years.
That's what I thought was that the U.S. was the currency everybody wanted to invest in, but
traditionally,
yeah, and that is very scary to me.
Yeah. Now the Swiss franc, the yen are pretty sexy for safe havens. The U.S. a little bit less so, and probably growing more and more less so. Now,
by the way, we had a question on our Tuesday night, the debate, and
right.
If y'all are listening, we will handle that on Tuesday. That's our Q&A, and get to that question or an answer to that question or how we can possibly help you with that. So you have not been disregarded. We just save questions for Tuesdays.
Yep. And if somebody else has one, feel free to throw it in.
Yep.
And if I'll go ahead and take this opportunity. If you will do the little YouTubey things, hit like, subscribe if you haven't. It would help us out. We appreciate it greatly.
Ring that bell, notifications.
Now with the yen carry trade, if that continues, if the shift from treasury bonds to yen assets, Japanese bonds continues, you can expect prices of U.S. bonds to drop. Now, remember the teeter-totter?
Mm-hmm.
I have talked about the teeter-totter, several times before. The teeter-totter is a perfect representation of a bond. You've got two things that move. They move inversely, and one thing, the base, is fixed. So you've got the interest. Yeah, the fulcrum is fixed. You've got the interest rate, you've got the price. So as people dump U.S. bonds, the price will drop. As the price drops, interest rate rises. So you've got an interesting dichotomy here of the Fed trying to lower interest rates But there are some major movements in the market that are going to encourage dumping of U.S. bonds. Who wins?
Not us.
Historically, that's when I was talking about the Fed would accommodate the market and just, go along. But there are some major problems there. One, rising interest rates will hurt the economy more. Two, the U.S. government interest, spending on interest has just blown up with the debt soaring, with interest rates being at normal levels over these past 2 years. Well, interest spending on the national debt has ballooned to about $1.3 trillion this year. Now, somebody asked me the other day, they said, well, I just saw where the government said interest spending just passed 1 trillion. And I go, well, that's the fiscal year versus a calendar year. What I do is I look at the calendar year spending, January through December, because that's the way most people think. Well, the U.S. fiscal year, the government fiscal year ends in September, I think. I actually forget, but it's something like that. So they have a different sample of months than what I'm talking about. This past month, our deficit spending was $685 billion for the month, which, comes out to, no, I'm sorry. It was 468 billion. Yeah, I believe that's right. Well, that comes out to, $5 trillion in debt if that amount of borrowing was kept up every month. Massive amount of debt, massive blowing up of spending. Not only that, we've got a lot of debt the government has issued in previous years that's coming due over the next few months. That's probably $6 or $7 trillion worth that they're going to have to refinance at the higher rate. Yes.
I'm agreeing.
So the deficit spending is pretty significant factor because we can only sell so much debt internationally and to U.S. investors.
Yeah.
The more debt we issue, the more risk is seen in the government. Can it pay back this debt? Or is it just going to have to, hyperinflate the economy by printing money to pay the interest? Kind of like third world nations do when they borrow far more than they can pay back. It's a conundrum. So who's going to win? Now, this graph shows you the trend in bond prices over the past 40 years. And you'll notice there's a pretty definite trend in prices increasing over the past 40 years. This meant that interest rates teeter-totter. If prices are getting high, bonds are in more demand, interest rate drops. So as these prices have gone up, interest rates have been trending down. Well,
a couple questions.
Yeah, the past 2 years, we have actually broken this 40-year trend. And bond future prices have crashed significantly below it. That is very telling, particularly in terms of future implications for bond prices and bond yields. All right, questions. Weird how wars in Ukraine and Middle East have not impacted market even with uncertainty hiking gold. It haven't yet. Sooner or later, reality's a bitch. And the market has been solely focused, my opinion, market has been so focused on the Federal Reserve, hoping and praying that it cuts rates and starts QE again. because the market loves a guaranteed increase in stock prices, regardless of what goes on in the world, regardless of what goes on in the economy.
Any of you
And
have not been here, QE is quantitative easing.
yeah, it's where the Fed is basically giving out free money to the large banks, trying to encourage spending and lending. Well, what the large banks have done with it is invest in the market, bonds and stocks.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one reason, particularly if you look at this graph, that's one reason why over the past 10, 15 years, bond prices have gone so high. There was a 4 or 5 year period where they didn't do QE, but here's COVID. You had that huge increase in spending. Market went up 40%, and then here is the drop.
Can you explain
So,
quantitative easing one more time?
yeah, quantitative easing. The Federal Reserve would actively, it increased the assets in its balance sheet from 600 billion to 9 trillion. And the way it does this is it basically prints money and then goes out and it will lend it to banks like Citi, America Deutsche. There are 36 banks we call primaries that have a intimate relationship with the Federal Reserve, handle all the Fed issuance of securities. They're called primaries. So the primaries could borrow from the Fed at 0.2% for the past decade, 0.1%, 0.2%. And then they could take that money and reinvest it. They could buy treasury bonds and get 1.5%, 2%. So they had a guaranteed 1%, 1.5%, 1.8% spread, risk-free. Or they would take some of the money and put it in the stock market, buy stocks through their equity desk, through their investment banking division.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why, for example, in the Obama years, GDP averaged 1%, 1.5%. But yet the stock market, some years went up 40%. That makes no economic sense. That makes no financial sense. Well, the reason was QE. And I've got a graph. In fact, I think I can pull it up here. Let me do this.
I have another question, but I'm not going to ask it because I want you to continue your thought.
Yeah, let me do this real quick.
Mm-hmm.
This blue line, you want to pay attention to two things. This blue line and these shaded areas. These shaded areas are where the Fed is giving away free money. And you'll notice here, the shaded area begins when the stock market has fallen and is at a low. By the time that shaded area ends, the market has risen. Well, it stopped. No more free money. The market drops. The free money, the next shaded area, starts again. The market's at a bottom. It goes on, the market goes up pretty steadily the whole time. Well, the free money stops. The market drops. Free money starts again. Market goes up. Free money. There's a little dip because the market this time kind of knew what was going on and was expecting it to quit. Well, Bernanke launched another QE program in anticipation of what he called a fiscal cliff because he didn't want the market to crash. So he had a big QE program. And international banks, Europe Bank, Bank of Japan also did stimulus. So you tell the market goes up. As it nears quitting time, the market starts trending down, goes down. Europe has a big QE program. This is the European QE, global QE. BOE, European Central Bank, BOJ, Swiss National Bank, all had a major QE program. Okay. So there's a very, very close relationship. And then you've got the COVID, where the COVID crisis, and then the Fed launches another, it's not formally a QE. They were doing reverse repos and some other things. some active buying in the market, and obviously the stock market welcomed that. So that's where the market has gotten addicted, as I would describe it, to free money, to QE.
May I?
Certainly.
Okay, you mentioned something about the assets of America, and that's sort of how we build our value. Correct?
Okay.
Okay, so when we do things like leave billions of dollars worth of our own military equipment in Afghanistan, is that part of that's what we're worth? Like if we just give that away, which we did, how does
No,
that affect anything?
it doesn't really affect the market.
Okay.
You know, what it would affect is, for example, some of the equipment that we don't bring back when we are engaged overseas would be equipment that is deemed too old, too worn out, too broken to go to the expense to bring it back. So we literally walk away from it.
But when
Some of
it's
it,
reverse engineered,
well, some of it was not in Afghanistan. We left in such a hurry, such a panic. It wasn't well planned. It wasn't structured. And we left behind, some technology that, for example, China was parading some of our drones in a parade, 6 months ago that we had left in Afghanistan. We also left buildings full of cash. I don't know the actual cash value, $1, $2, $3 billion in cash that we had been using to pay, the tribal leaders for their support, pay out to the indigents to help them, buy food, kind of a welfare program, I guess. We're using it to pay troops in the Afghan military,
in
to
our
buy,
friendlies.
yeah, that are friendly, those kind of things. And we just had buildings full of cash that we walked away from, didn't even empty out the cash. So obviously the Taliban and Al Qaeda have tons of cash to spend, and cash is untraceable. It's not like electronic transfers where, the NSA or CIA or DIA can track that money where it's transferred, the accounts in and the accounts out. No, we have no idea where it's going or where it's spent.
And how does that
So,
affect our economy?
future wars, future conflicts.
It doesn't lower
No,
the price of it doesn't affect inflation at all?
not directly or anything that I have seen.
Okay. And we got, mm-hmm.
You could say whatever money we left behind, they have to replace, print more. While that money's still in existence and is being spent elsewhere, you could maybe make an argument it tweaks inflation a little bit, but
Thank you.
Erwin, guess lower interest rates spurring market even with the threat of nuke war. With jobs are being lost in all different sectors. The numbers have been vastly overstated. Remember, the market went up when the job numbers were good. So when the market finds out the numbers were hokey, the BLS just did a revision and admitted it had overstated the jobs in one revision by 818,000. Well, I went back and added all the prior revisions they had made to those same numbers. And, the total was like 1.2 or 1.3 million jobs out of 2.4 or 5 million jobs added for last year. Their initial release versus their final revisions was 48% of what they announced. So literally 1 out of every 2 jobs they announced was mythical. Well, the market went up when it announced these, strong economy, great job gains. So you would think if the market was rational, that when it found out those job gains were fictional, that it would correct. Still waiting for rationality to re-enter the market.
But most of those jobs that were created for illegal immigrants and not for citizens of the U.S.
Well, that's two other aspects as well. Ellen's right. The full-time, if you look at the data over the past year, we've lost, and I'm ballparking the numbers, we've lost like 1.6, 1.7 million full-time jobs. We've gained 1.8 million part-time jobs. In addition, if you take those gains and look at them, American citizens have lost jobs, and all the job gains are to immigrants, largely illegal immigrants.
Yay.
So, that adds another twist on the whole debate of how good is the economy when all of the jobs are going likely to lower paid immigrants.
Yeah,
And
that's
part-time jobs are replacing full-time jobs.
I was talking to somebody who is fiscally conservative and just said, I can't vote, for Trump. And it's just like, okay, so just because of he's mean. I'm like, but the country, the people coming into this country first are eating our pets. Second of all, they're getting all the jobs. Americans are not. And Kamala has had 4 years to handle this with Joe Biden. What? I mean, if she could have fixed it, she would have done something to fix it, or at least said something, in my opinion. The borders are.
The facts are inarguable. Federal spending has gone from $4.5 trillion in 2019 to just about $7 trillion this year in 24. That's a 57% increase in federal spending in 5 years. Now, let me ask y'all, how many of y'all have had a 57% increase in your income? Particularly if you are poor or middle class. Now, if you're upper class, if you're, upper class, you've probably done well. But for the middle class America, the flyover America, they've been crushed. You have new records being set at the number of people with 2 or more full-time jobs. We've got people who watch this channel faithfully that are working 2 or 3 jobs.
Or 5, some.
Or 5 jobs. 2025 spending is projected to be at $8.1 trillion. Now, the way federal projections go of future spending, it's more likely to be closer to 8.2 to 8.5 trillion.
We can't afford it.
And, I've shown the site before, digging it up again here.
Sorry, y'all, I got 10 screens to look at.
Okay. The U.S. debt clock. Whoops. Why doesn't this go away?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Go away now. I'm tired of you. Since when did that happen?
I don't know. I see what you're looking at, but it's like an ad.
Somebody killed my screen. This thing.
No, that would be me.
How? There's no X button on it. Okay, well, screw it. Never mind. Here's the U.S. national debt clock, $35.4 trillion. Even cooler down here is credit card debt, $1.4 trillion. The consumer, the average consumer, has been racking credit card debt up And retail stores have been dying. Retail sales have been dying. Retail stores are closing. So what they're doing is they're paying their bills on their credit card. They're buying groceries on their credit card. That's not going to hold up. Now, I can't show you the interest on the national debt because it's behind here, but we're spending more on interest in the national debt than we do on defense.
Let me see if I can bring it up
Okay.
without that.
Yeah, I just brought it up earlier this morning and it wasn't an issue. Now, if you want to go to the time machine, now this is using U.S. government projections, but 2028, the national debt, according to the projections, goes from $35 to $47 trillion. And that's just in 3 years.
I'm going to remove that and present. I know it's not the quite same thing, but
yeah, I'm already done with that. I pointed out the numbers that I wanted.
Moffat.
Sorry about that. But, you know,
Medicare, Medicaid, everything is just, it's insane.
Yeah, if you look at, I can't quite see the columns on there, but
I'm going to see if I can make it bigger.
Interest on the national debt is now the third biggest item behind Social Security and Medicare, Medicaid. It's about to pass Social Security.
There's Medicare, Medicaid.
Yeah, I can't. Let me go back. I'll read it on mine.
I made it huge. You can't see it?
No, because my screen's real small. It shows up on my screen small. So if you look at Social Security, it's 1.47, which the month to month on that doesn't change, whereas the monthly interest on the federal debt has really jumped the past 4, 5, 6 months. So by going to the calendar year instead of the fiscal year, you get interest on the national debt right now is about 1.1 trillion, headed toward 1.2 by the end of September. I mean, it's September or October, whenever the fiscal year ends. So interest on the national, okay, the point is interest on the national debt will likely pass Social Security this next year. It's past defense. So within a year, year and a half, interest on the national debt will be the second largest budget item for the federal government.
Okay, I'm going to blow this up really big and see if you can see it. The GDP
Oh, that's
ratio.
okay. I'm done with it.
Okay.
And then, if we go from 35 trillion in 24 to 47 trillion in 28, that's 4 years. I said 3. I'll go ahead and do the math. It's 4 years, but that's a 30% increase in 4 years. That's massive. If we can barely afford the debt we have now and the economy stagnates, what do you think it's going to be like in 2-3 years? Big problem. You're going to have a hard time selling U.S. debt. So if you're having a hard time selling U.S. debt, practical reality, hard time selling U.S. debt, what's going to happen to the prices of U.S. bonds? Prices going to go down. If teeter-totter, prices go down, interest rates are going to go up. Interest rates go up, the economy's stagnating.
We're screwed.
We're screwed. That's very possible reality.
It's probable.
That's a probable reality. So, the administration is working on making interest expense the number one budget item. I mean, it's really, let's be honest, that's what government was created for, wasn't it? We need to have an honest discussion of that.
Now, I think that if Trump gets elected and if Trump brings in Elon Musk to do an oversight of all the spending in the government and cut out all the waste, that could be huge.
Well, understand, he's still got to get it through Congress. And so if
I know.
Congress
I'm just
Congress
being
doesn't favor that, it won't happen.
I know. It needs to happen.
It'll go nowhere. One other problem with the U.S. economy is workers. We have an aging economy, an aging demographic. People are, the average age is increasing. So we have more and more old people, more and more people retiring, and fewer young people. Not only that, pardon?
More boomers.
Not only that, but fewer young people are working.
Mm-hmm.
More are working full-time jobs. More of them are just getting part-time jobs. And so if you look at the percentage rate of people employed in the economy, the labor participation rate, this is the wrong graph.
I love it when you do that.
I hate it.
Professionals.
I hate that.
We are so professional.
Yeah, sorry, I got in a hurry.
You're fine.
Yeah. Okay. Well, anyway, it looks like this, only worse.
It looks sort of like that.
Yeah.
If you just squint,
the percentage of people eligible is decreasing, and we're not even back to the pre-pandemic level. So we've got fewer and fewer people working. We've got more and more people dependent on government, both for Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, food stamps, whatever. That math does not work out well over the next few years.
The math doesn't math.
The math doesn't math. So that's a problem. And it all leads to this picture. This is the growth in the federal debt. Now, this is going back to the year 2000. And you can tell here, this is what I call a tale of three slopes. Now, if you wonder why you took algebra in school, here's an opportunity for you to use your mad algebra skills. Because remember, in algebra, you covered the formula for a line and calculating the slope of a line.
And rise over run, all that good stuff.
All that good stuff. Well, if you look here, you've actually got three different slopes. You've got the section here between 2000 and 2007, where if I extended this line, pretty much a straight line, I would be somewhere around here. Then you've got from 2008 through probably 2019.
Who was that?
So if I took,
Was that Obama?
Obama and Trump. If I took that slope, I would end up somewhere about here. And then you've got the last 3 or 4 years. If I took this slope, and I'm throwing out COVID. I throw out COVID in most every example over time that I use because it was such a weird period. Now, obviously, it still counts in terms of the money borrowed, but I'm just looking at the change in administrative policy, the level of borrowing, the extent of borrowing. If you take the slope of this line, you can tell it's vastly different, and it's accelerating. It's almost about to turn exponential versus linear.
True.
That is a problem we will not come back from. We have some structural issues.
You think?
Here it is.
There you go.
See?
You found it.
stupid computer misnumbered them.
Mm-hmm.
Well, here was what I was talking about. Here's the labor participation rate. And this is, 95, 96 when it peaked. And it's been falling steadily since then. Obviously, the subprime crisis had a big impact.
Mm-hmm.
This is 2005. No, I'm sorry. This is 2005. This is, 2006, 7, 8, 9. This is 10 through 14. Now, it kind of stabilized in 16, 17, started increasing a little bit in 18, 19, and then COVID hit. Obviously, everybody was, let go for 2 weeks, or some of the lockdowns lasted longer, but we still have not recovered to the pre-pandemic level. So even not getting back to the pre-pandemic level and looking, it's starting to trend down again. This is the big problem. The maths just don't work when you've got fewer and fewer people paying in and more people taking. So,
Okay, Clay, I took all the burden off of you, and I have both the babies, but I can't move
that's okay.
without both of them getting up and deciding they want to be on my lap.
That's okay. I appreciate
okay. It's not okay, but you're
it.
welcome.
Yeah, works for
Yeah.
me.
I
Thank
know
you.
it does. Yeah, you're welcome.
The this kind of brings us back to the markets. Gold over the past year is up about 53%. So far this year, Bitcoin is up 41%. The S&P is up 18%. So what do we have to look forward to in the future? Well, a lot of people are excited because inflation, quote unquote, came down. Well, here's the actual release, the table released by the Bureau of Economic Affairs. And it shows the monthly percent changes for each of the months. Now, hope you can see that. But if you follow since March of 24, March of this year, 0.4, 0.3, 0. Well, what in June? Minus 0.1. Well, what's happened in July? Well, it was 0.2. In August, 0.2. That's the major CPI rate. Now, there's something, that's what people are celebrating, is it looks like inflation is kind of flattened out, when actually it's been rising. But the Fed cares more about what it calls the core rate. And the core rate is this second highlighted area, which strips out energy and food because they're volatile. They go up and down a bunch. They can kind of distort the underlying actual inflation rate. So the Fed pays more attention to this. And if you look at it, starting in March, it went from 4 to 3 to 2 to 1. Well, what's happened the last 2 months? It went from 0.1 to 0.2 to 0.3. Inflation is actually increasing. The rate the Federal Reserve follows is actually showing inflation increasing. Even if you take the CPI and say, well, it's kind of stagnant, it's still at 2.6, 2.8%, which is still 40% higher than the Fed's target of 2%. And if we look at some of the underlying, sectors, shelter, housing was up, 5.5%. Motor vehicle insurance was up 16% in 1 month. Medical care was up 3% in a month. Used cars were up 9.5%. So if you look at this data, the details, what did I do here? If you look at this data.
Are you okay?
Yeah, I know. Clicking is dangerous.
Yes.
There's a whole lot more that people aren't talking about, that the market's not paying attention to, that I think deserve more attention than what they're getting. So if I look at this, my opinion is the market is expecting a 50 basis point cut, 0.5%. I think the Fed, looking at this underlying data, is probably not going to do a 50 basis point cut, probably looking at a 25 basis point cut, 0.25%. Jobs are decreasing, but inflation is increasing. So that brings up two major points for the market, the stock market, to consider. One, will it be disappointed if there's only a 25 basis point cut? Because the market is pricing in a 50 basis point cut. That's what everybody's expecting. And two, will the market treat the actual cut, which will be Wednesday, will it treat that event as a sell on the news event? If you're not familiar, there's an old cliche in the stock market. You buy the rumor, sell the news. So the rumor is 50 basis point cut. People have been buying that. Market's gone up good the last few days. But when the news actually hits, is that when they're going to sell? That, along with being disappointed in the amount of the cut. Not only that, consider also the U.S. is about to announce it'll allow Ukraine to bomb cities in Russia. You know, what if Ukraine uses the missiles to attack major targets in Russia? The Kremlin, what if it attacks St. Petersburg? There's just all sorts of things that are not good. So, you know, are we headed to World War III? Does anybody think that any of this will be bullish for the markets?
Nope.
Keep in mind, Buffett's dumping stocks. NVIDIA is at dizzy highs. World War III is getting closer. Definitely not further away, but closer. Commercial real estate delinquencies are still rising. The CRE damage is spreading beyond offices, going now into the retail segment. Commodities are still falling. You look at the number of positions in oil, it's at a historic low. The number of people buying oil is at a historic low. Some of this seems to indicate segments of the market, particularly commodities, are pricing in the hardest economic landing of this century. Harder than the subprime crisis. The yen carry trade is still on the deck. Retail sales keep missing. The Fed keeps chunking out liquidity to banks, particularly as stricter Basel III requirements draw closer and their loan portfolios are sagging, dropping in value. And Basel III, we'll talk about that in a minute. But, are we creating certain moral hazard problems in the finance sector, particularly in banking?
I think so.
We let bankers make crappy loans, and when those loans turn sour on them, the Fed bails them out. The Treasury bails them out. So does that just encourage them to make crappier loans?
They don't have a risk.
Moral hazard, because they don't have a risk. The more loans they make, the more volume they do, the bigger the bonuses for the management. So one last aspect that I think plays big on the market, or will play big on the market, is I think the market's ignored the election. What if it looks like Kamala will win? Do you think the markets will be excited about increasing corporate taxes by 30%? Do you think the market will be excited at dropping the Trump tax cuts? Middle income families would see about a 15 to 17% increase in their taxes.
It would be impossible for a small business to succeed.
Do you think the market will be excited on taxes of unrealized gains of 25%? Do you think it'll be excited about the government further pushing the green agenda, like forcing people to buy EVs when the market is rejecting EVs?
Nope.
you look at the pros for the stock market. You've got Fed cuts, you've got hope for a soft landing, you've got restarting QE. If I have missed something there, let me know. I can't think of anything I missed that doesn't fit into those general categories. And
Real
from what
quick, I'm
go
gonna
ahead.
take a quick break and let you finish this up, and then we have a few yes or no questions
Okay.
for those who want to. I've heard y'all missed that, so we're gonna get back to a little bit of that. But I'm gonna take a quick break and find the questions that we have not actually answered yet.
That'll
Cool.
be cool.
All right.
So what are the pros for the stock market? You've got Fed cuts, as if a quarter of a basis point or half a basis point is going to do a whole lot of good. You've got hope for a soft landing, and you've got restarting QE. So I'm thinking the cuts will be lower and slower than what the market wants. I'm thinking the soft landing will be harder, and QE is not starting. I'm thinking China continues crashing with its real estate stocks already below 2008 levels. I'm thinking the labor markets continue to drop. We continue losing jobs. We have had falling full-time jobs and increasing part-time jobs. That's typical of recessions, particularly significant recessions. I mean, historically, prosperity has been shared by all workers, but there have only been two exceptions in history to that. The subprime crisis, when the poor and the middle class were devastated, the upper middle class was devastated, but the upper class did well. And the second time in our history when that has occurred was this past year. Poor and middle have been hammered. Now, I can't predict, and I'm not trying to predict what the markets are going to do short term, but I do reasonably expect volatility to increase. Volatility is associated with falling markets. I think the bond markets will have a short-term bounce while the Fed initiates the cuts. Longer term, they're going to continue the downward trend. Gold, probably, if I'm right in what I have said and projected over the next year, 2 years, gold will likely continue to be higher in demand, as will Bitcoin. Though there's, obviously the possibility that Bitcoin will be dumped again for liquidity purposes. Like, remember when the yen carry trade started bombing the market and all the stocks started dropping? Well, people with short positions who had borrowed money to sell, to take a short position, well, they needed to raise cash quickly. So a lot of them dumped Bitcoin to raise cash. That may happen again, and you may see Bitcoin take a quick drop short term. But to me, the stock market has given up caring about earnings, the economy, or anything going on in the world. It's solely focused on the Fed and hoping for more rate cuts and QE. At some point, it's going to become very disappointed. And when it does, that's going to be ugly. So, that's kind of my putting the pieces of the puzzle together. That's how I view some of the events, some of the underlying data. Not really following the headlines, but looking at some of the underlying data and then looking at the trends. So, we talk about jobs. Trying to get something up and it's not cooperating. We talk about the loss of jobs. And I was sent this by a dear friend of the show. I don't know if I should mention names or not. I'm a little hesitant sometimes. But this is called the Warn Tracker. It's a great little site. And companies that have over 100 employees and who are laying off more than 50 employees, there's some, weird requirements here and there, some varying requirements here and there, but they have to give a 60-day notice. It's called a WARN notice, WARN. And so this site tracks all the companies that have given notices. And if you'll notice, there's a bunch of them. Now you can click on the little button and it shows so far this year, 1,110 companies have extended WARN notice, laying off 150,000 employees in 2024 alone. And that doesn't count all the small businesses closing up. I travel some, and as I go through cities and whatever, I'm seeing a lot more small little businesses shuttered, even here in town. And that's sad. Those aren't included in this. Oh, I'm not sharing my screen. Duh. Thank you. I keep forgetting Ellen clicks it off. Thank you, Jane. So here's the WARN notice. And you can scroll through and see the companies. You can sort by notice date, how many were laid off or are going to be laid off, and what's the, layoff date. When do the layoffs commence? So here's where you can click and get the total for 2024. In addition, below it, it shows the impact on different states. You've got the layoffs over time. You can do it for the last 12 months. And you can tell it, there is kind of a cyclical nature to the data. It's up and down and up and down. But I wish we had it. The data actually goes back, or WARN notices actually started in the 80s or early 90s. I'd love to see the longer term trend here. And then you've got layoffs by state. Obviously, California, Texas are the two big leaders. So that's an interesting site if you want a little bit more perspective on layoffs and what's going on. Some of these are companies not necessarily familiar with, Sodexo, for example, but some of them, Northrop Grumman, Equus, Pitney Bowes, Boeing probably ought to be in here prominently before long. Exxon Mobil, Big Lots, Meta has announced, Google has announced, all sorts. Even the tech industry is laying off. So I thought that would be kind of an interesting site for you. And I appreciate you sending that in. I also alluded to Basel III. Now, Basel III refers to international banking standards that are being formulated and adopted by mostly Western nations in order to try to improve and standardize bank capital requirements. Now, these new standards are highly obtuse, they're confusing, they're complicated, and they involve extensive regulatory enhancement, extensive increases in regulatory power. Now, the stated goal is to make banks more resilient and improve confidence in the banking system. But there's always trade-offs. And that's what, you got to kind of keep in mind. There's trade-offs in cost, there's trade-offs in lending ability, and trade-offs in bank profits. Now, Basel III, if adopted in the US, increases cost and restricts lending while negatively impacting profitability. So is that good or bad? Everybody wants a more resilient system. Everybody wants a banking system with reduced risk. But what are you willing to pay for that? Are you willing to have higher cost on your loans? Are you willing to have less access to loans? And are you willing to have lower profits in banks? There is a group that is opposed to the adoption of Basel III. called Another Bill Americans Can't Afford. Now, I don't know who's behind this. I did not do a whole lot of research into it. Just came across it this afternoon and, thought I would throw it up. It's got some, interesting little things. So they talk about how it negatively impacts these different categories. And they've got some links which you can click on and go to a article. This is in Banknotes blog, which gives more detail on how this would hurt small businesses. And you can read through it. And the main problem in terms of affecting loan access are the capital requirements. So if a bank lends you $100,000, they have got to now take 10% and put aside for reserves, for loan losses, for their risk. That's bank capital. Well, the U.S. is trying to soften that standard, that requirement, to 6.5%. So that 6.5% would give the bank more money to lend out. It would increase their profits and improve lending. But the trade-off is you have banks with less capital. So how much is necessary? How resilient do we want it? This group hints that banks are resilient enough. Well, are banks all that resilient, or is just the Fed bailing them out? How does that impact borrowers? How does that impact the economy? How does that impact moral hazard? Again, is that a good thing or a bad thing? I admit to being a little bit torn here both ways. It does, Basel III, the adoption, the higher credit standards would force banks to operate more conservatively. I am not necessarily opposed to that. The flip side is it does give government much more control to enforce regulatory policies they want. It gives government a lot more opportunity to intervene, impose restrictions, mandate capital raises, or enforce risk reduction strategies. Now, what's a risk reduction strategy? Well, suppose the administration comes in and is very green and it thinks manufacturing automobiles is a bad thing. It considers that a risk to the environment. So it puts on restrictions to banks of lending to automobile manufacturers. Is that a good thing? It can impose limits on borrowing to disfavored industries who are deemed riskier in the guise of reducing risk and to ensure, quote unquote, financial stability. Another issue to keep in mind is banks have issued over the past 5, 10 years, 7 years, a lot of loans with near zero interest rates. The Fed forced interest rates down low. This was the government. So as these loans are refinanced and their interest rates go up, that puts a huge strain on the borrower. Boosting capital requirements will also make the bank less likely to want to issue them a loan. So you'll force them into bankruptcy. One problem with bank lending is CLOs, collateralized loan obligations. Banks actually will make bad loans or crappy loans or high-risk loans, however you want to title it, and then they sell it to a trust, which buys all these commercial loans and then securitizes it, issues it as a loan security, a CLO. And you can buy shares if you're an individual or a bank, you can buy shares in these CLOs. The advantage to banks is they can make a crappy loan. They get to keep the fees and they sell the risk and they get cash so they can make another loan. They can keep the fees, sell the risk. And so this stimulates lending, possibly beyond what it should be. as far as the bank buying these CLOs, you put them in a pool, 1,000 of them in a pool, you've got 1,000 crappy loans in a pool. But the rating agencies will rate that CLO as a triple A, just like they did before the subprime crisis. So you have banks buying toxic assets, crappy loans, but they get to buy them because they're rated triple A. This is a manufactured quality versus a real quality. Now, Basel III is hostile to this kind of credit risk transfer. Is that good or bad? This is what the Fed has built up and produced over the years by bailing out the large banks who have bought these bad, crappy, toxic loans, and then they start collapsing, and the Fed and the Treasury bailed them out. This is the result of QE, tons of cheap liquidity, and making bad loans look safe. So if we do adopt Basel III, we think, yay, we won't have these kind of loans. Flip side is we may collapse the whole economy. Is that good or bad? My problem ultimately with banking is moral hazard. Banks have been insulated from the consequences of their actions, and they get bailed out far too often. They are too big to fail. I think those too big to fail banks need to be broken up. You need to then hold management and the board of directors responsible for taking excessive risk in bank failure. But I think there needs to be a transition period. You need to give banks 5 years to clean off this waste. You need to end or limit securitizing and banks purchasing misrated assets. And, if you did this, if you made bank management and board of directors liable for their own stupidity, if you let the banks fail, and then you seize the CEOs and the board of directors' assets to try to cover some of the losses, you wouldn't need all the regulations. You wouldn't need all the regulators. The bankers would clean up their act on their own, which is why we'll never see it. So I hope that gives you a little bit more background on Basel III. I like the general idea of improving lending standards, of making banks more responsible. But there's a downside to it. There's a cost, increased regulation, possible abuse by government. And then with a rapid implementation, you would quite possibly crash the economy, destroy the banking industry due to the crappy loans that they have issued and crappy loans that they own. Fair enough?
Mm-hmm.
So Ellen has the little questions. So let's do a few of those.
All right. So
wait a minute. Have one comment here. Glad you are ending podcast on a high. Think you're realistic. Cam will get us closer to World War III out of weakness. Yep. I can't believe we're doing what we're doing. I can't. Anyway. Okay, beyond my control.
That's true. If you guys have not heard of this game, it's called Yes or No. It is a Daily Wire game from the Michael Knowles show. You might not like him, but yes or no. So, sorry. Excuse me. What this game does is there are cards. I've got many of them. This is like half the deck. I think I've got quite a few more. But anyway, I'm going to answer the way that I think Clay will answer, and Clay is going to answer the way that he thinks I will answer to this statement or to the statement. All right. Are we ready? So you're going to answer, right, how you think I'm going to answer, and I'm going to answer how I think you're going to answer.
And y'all answer the way you think Ellen will answer.
We'll give you guys a few seconds to do that. But, okay, the first one is, statement is virtue is more important than freedom. What do y'all think that I would answer? Anyone? Really?
Yeah, I think you would say it would be.
What
But
do you,
for me, I don't think you can have one without the other.
well, I would say no. It's not more important. It could be equally important for you, but one is not more important than the other.
Yeah, I don't think you can ultimately have and maintain freedom without virtue. I don't think
Okay.
you can have virtue, the freedom to exercise it, without freedom.
Without freedom. Okay. So you lose, I win that point. Because I
Typical.
guessed yours, you didn't guess mine. Okay. I have a better life than my parents did at my age. What do I think you would say? On or no? You are correct. Am I?
Yes,
I am
you're
correct.
you're correct.
Two for me, one for you.
And don't get me
Okay.
wrong, I am a blessed man. I'm a lucky man. I'm not complaining about my life, but my parents did well.
They did. All right, next one. We should abolish the minimum wage. I know, I know you. Yes, absolutely. There is no minimum wage.
Yeah, I hold that the real minimum wage is zero, and that having a minimum wage discriminates against the low educated and low skilled workers. It makes it impossible for low skilled, low educated people to get their career started, to acquire additional skills. And remember, when we were teens, everybody worked in the summer. All those jobs have vaporized
Hmm.
because they really aren't an economic benefit to the employers. But back then, labor was cheap and the companies would do it kind of out of service to the community and to get the kids started in their career. Now, with the liability, the insurance requirements, the hourly wages, companies can't afford to hire kids for 40 hours a week. It's a huge money loser. So those jobs have just vaporized.
That's true. We ready
Go
for the
ahead.
next one? The stock market is just legal gambling. Ready?
Yep. Just wait on you.
Oh, I think it is.
Do you really?
You're wrong again. Yeah. I know you don't think it is.
No way,
Um,
shape, manner, or form. Gambling is a matter of probability. Stock market is a matter of information. That's a
oh,
vastly different environment.
okay. Um, okay. I know I'm ahead, so we'll see. All right. The voting age should be raised.
The what?
Voting age
Voting
should be
age.
raised. Mm-hmm. Ready? One, two, three, go.
You're
What?
wrong.
Really? You think it should?
Yes. I think it ought to be raised to 30 or 40. I think I
No,
think you
I think just women should be taken out of the whole thing.
I
I
think you
know
ought to
that's
be a
a horrible thing to say, but women should not vote.
I think you ought to be a boomer in order to vote.
No, no, you guys make terrible decisions. No.
Now, I do think and I don't know exactly how I would do this, but was it Jefferson who said, "I fear for my country when the populace comes to understand that they can vote themselves largesse out of the public treasury." And I think that's where we're approaching. We have so many voters that are dependent on government handouts, subsidies, whatever, that they want that to continue and increase. And they are becoming the majority. And pretty soon, those people who work and pay taxes will be in a minority, and they will never, ever be able to recover. And it will continue until the death of the republic. So that is one of my concerns. Legal gambling. Yeah, I know, James. I'm working with her. Clay, do you make
Overtime
overtime
pay.
pay?
Him, I don't get paid crap to do this. Come on, people. Jeez. All right.
Yeah, this is strictly a voluntary effort. This is a money losing proposition.
Yes, it is. It is.
At 9:25, Clay will start citing the Bible.
He might. He might. All right, next one. Most of the time, the act of going fishing is just a ploy to leave the house and get some peace and quiet. Most of the time. Is this correct?
It's a beautiful thing. That's the great thing about fishing. That is probably the main reason.
I caught rays, sun rays.
Yeah, that's probably the main reason most people fish, is it's just peaceful. And you might get, a good meal out of it.
Okay. you know the answer to this one. The problems all started when women were allowed to vote. I don't know what you're going to say.
You gave yours away. You gave yours away a little earlier when you said, women shouldn't be allowed to vote.
I know. So what do you think?
I think yes and no. It's like the age thing. I think people that vote ought to be informed. They ought to know what they're voting for and know it and voting about. They ought to know the issues. If they don't know the issues, if they don't know the consequences of the ideas, I don't want them voting. I don't want idiots determining the election. I don't care if they're male, female, young, or old. And I think that's what we're getting, closer to.
Yeah.
And so, you could ask me that question on any specific demographic, and I would hesitate. It's not necessarily that I think that whole demographic ought to be excluded.
I know.
It's just a matter of, I want people to value the vote more, to where they'll spend at least a little time trying to learn about the issues and the consequences of them. The ideas and the consequences of them.
Clay will always say, like, let's go out to eat tonight. I don't know, neither one of us feel like cooking. Let's go do something. And I'm like, you know what happened? He's like, what do you want to go eat? I'm like, you know what happened the first time a woman decided what to eat for dinner? The whole world was doomed. Eve took the apple, gave it to Adam. It was just a shit show. And he's just like, you use that on me every time. You never have to pick a place, because I'm like, it's true.
Yeah, it's not
Women
that I necessarily
emotional decision makers.
Yeah, and it's not that I necessarily want her to pick a place. I mean, if there's a place she wants to go to, great. But if she, wants something or doesn't want something, that would be informative. So what I do now is I just go ahead and name a place, and then she goes, no, I don't want to go there. So we have to go through this cycle till I finally come up with a place that she wants to go to. There's just a better way.
All right, we've got upcoming Bible verse 925. Yay. CJ. Who's CJ? Christ Jesus? What are we? Yes? No? And then Sportscast at 9:30. Okay. Jane, don't even get me started on you uninformed voters. It's disgusting. I know, honey. You poor thing. She's a judge of elections, so yeah, God knows. It's clear on the podcast he is recording. James, Adam and Eve. Good one. No idea that was a butt chat. Hey, there you go. You know? I forgot all after the Pelicans. Y'all are killing me. All right. Hang on. I'm trying. Okay. This is a fun one. In 2020, Joe Biden won more votes than any previous president in history.
I ought to wait for everybody to answer yours. I got yours right?
Oh, God, yeah.
Yeah.
No way in hell. We've done this one before, but we're going to do it again. What do we got? Pelicans good, windmills bad. Whoop. Oh, stop it.
Can I get an
Pelicans
amen to this one?
Amen.
We'll start the revival.
There you go. People who hang toilet paper under, not over, are crypto anarchists. Thank you. We're both right.
Nope.
My grandfather does it. I'm wrong?
You're wrong.
You like it under, not over? I thought you liked it over, not under.
Read the question.
People who hang toilet paper under, not over, are crypto anarchists.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with being a crypto anarchist.
For fuck's sake. Okay. Okay, here's one. I have lost friends or family members due to my political beliefs. I'm going to let y'all answer first. Chat. Go ahead.
Yeah, has anyone lost a family member due to their political beliefs? I hope not, but I know they're out there.
Okay,
it's easy for someone.
Go ahead.
It's easy for someone to check a box and mail the ballot. Most people are too lazy to show up at the polling place. So yes, it's possible to get all those additional votes. I just have a hard time thinking that Joe Biden outpolled Obama in his best year.
Yeah.
Particularly when nobody came to his rallies. He literally would be speaking somewhere and have 20 people. When there was no great turnout at the polls, lines weren't long. There wasn't raves of people, but he gets a record number of votes. That just strikes me as a little inconsistent. Well, was unfriended on Facebook for a while. I hope they learned their lesson.
I do too.
I'm sure he did. I have seen the evidence personally. You're
voting.
So you're saying you think Biden did get 81 million votes? I'm not sure.
I don't know. All right. So have you? I think we both know the answer to this one for each other.
What's the question, Ellen?
I've lost friends or family members because of my political beliefs. There you go. Yeah, there you go.
I have not.
You haven't?
Have not.
Oh, I know a couple.
Who? Well, don't say anybody, but I don't know anybody.
I do. I'm right, you're wrong. All right. Hang on. Unfortunately, yes. He did get them. Okay.
Okay, he got the votes. I'm just not sure they were all alive and eligible voters. Maybe that's better.
James, election fraud button. Okay. Water is wet. There you go. Oh God. I know the answer to this one, but we're going to do it anyway. They were all the lazy emailing people. You can email your ballot? What? Can you do that?
Most states, no. I don't know about all of them.
I don't know. This is interesting.
Yeah, we'll see.
All right. I have been vaccinated for COVID-19.
Huh.
There, one of us is no, and one of us is, I guess you're no, and it's hard. My screen's mirrored and yours is not, so it's weird. Sorry, autocorrect, the mail-in ballots. True. Okay, this is a good one. You ready?
Yep.
The culture war is more important than the national debt. Five, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hell no.
Oh, I would say they are.
Really?
Yeah.
We both got that wrong.
Again, it goes back to virtue and freedom, culture. You know, a culture of personal discipline, personal responsibility, a culture of virtue and true value. I don't think you can have a prosperous economy without people holding values. Who was it Hamilton or Jefferson that said, you know, our form of government is fit for only a virtuous people? You know, look at Afghanistan. We tried to convert them, and Iraq. We tried to convert them to a, you know, democratic form of government, and
Because we're stupid.
it just failed because those people don't have the same values that we do in the West. I'm even going to call them Judeo-Christian values, Puritan work ethic, the infinite value of life, property rights. They don't share those values. And without those values, you cannot have our form of government or our culture or our freedoms. I remember Jackie Chan decades ago was talking about he supports the communist government, the actor. Mm-hmm. He supports the communist government. And he made an interesting comment. He said, not every people should choose their form of government. I forget exactly how he worded it, but he was saying that the Chinese people as a whole don't have the background, don't have the knowledge, don't have the experience. They have different cultures, and if you didn't have a strong hand keeping them together, keeping them unified, then, you know, things would become feudal again. You know, kind of like Afghanistan would break up into the different tribes if there wasn't a strong and heavy hand. You know, Saddam Hussein in Iraq, you know, quelled the differences between the Shia and the Sunni. I think the Shia were the minority, but they were the ruling class, and they kept, you know, a firm hand on the populace. There's some truth in that. You know, some people are not fit for a democratic form of government. There's just too many tribal allegiances, too much tradition, too little value of human life, no respect for property, those kind of things. And you can't change that in a few years. It would take generations.
Yeah. All right, next one. My family would be totally fine if I married a liberal. You, yes. Oh, hell no. All of my quote unquote family, no.
It's already liberal.
Oh, yeah. You said yes, but oh, yeah, they would. Fuck it. Okay, sorry. I didn't process that right. Um, debt can be an important part of building wealth. Yep, because you build your credit.
Well managed, well used. I'm not. Who's the guy that always argues no debt?
I don't know. That
You
Dave
know who
guy,
I'm talking.
um,
Big financial guy, personal financial advisor.
the idiot Kramer.
No, not
No.
Kramer. Um,
Okay, here we go.
Dave Ramsey.
Yeah, that's who I was thinking of at first. Yeah.
Yeah, Dave Ramsey argues you should never have debt. So might disagree with him on some occasions there. Susan. Hey, Clay, I got it. But seeing how you feel the economy is going to tank, what
Hey,
should any of us do?
wait. Hi, Susan. It's so good to see you on here. Where are your manners?
Forgive me my manners, Susan.
Continue.
Yeah. Again, I don't offer specific investment advice. For me, and I'm older than probably a lot of you, so I am more concerned about big potential losses, and I would rather have a lower positive return than take the risk of a bigger loss. If I'm right and what I see as the current trends, I would not be shocked to see the market drop 20 or 30%. And at that time, I might consider going whole hog back into the market. However, now I am sticking more to cash. I do occasional hits, like if I see something really obscenely cheap, like back in August, VIX calls were really cheap. So I bought them. 2 weeks later, the market dropped
You got
significantly.
to explain what VIX calls are.
VIX calls is just a volatility index, and if the market falls, that volatility increases. So the calls make money if the underlying asset increases in value. So buying a VIX call is thinking that the market's going to fall. At least some. I didn't anticipate it would be that much necessarily, or that quick. But VIX was just historically so cheap. It was down near 11 or 12, and historically VIX is 18 to 24. And it went from 11 and a half to 38 in 2 days. Sold out. It was like, I don't know, 1,200%. So if I see something that I think is extremely cheap, I will take advantage of it. Again, that's my philosophy.
I think what she's saying though is that with stocks, like the question that I got was people are, especially boomers, are selling all their stocks and buying actual gold, not just the stock, but the actual product. What would you do? What would Clay do? WWCD.
I mean, I can only say what I am doing.
I know. And wait,
so,
before you say that,
I'm still holding on to the crypto. Now in my retirement accounts, I can sell it and not pay taxes. In the personal accounts, I would have to pay taxes 30, 35, 40%. So if I think crypto is going to drop 20%, I'm better off not selling it and paying the taxes. But in my retirement accounts, if it gets back up to 65 or 70, and I think the market is, just about to drop, like Wednesday, I may Tuesday close out some of my crypto accounts in the retirement accounts because I won't have to pay taxes on those gains. And then if the market reacts badly to the Fed's cut and people are dumping Bitcoin to try to raise liquidity, I'll bypass that drop. That drop may be 5, 10, 15%.
That's
I'll buy
another
back
issue
in.
too, is that people will sell Bitcoin to get liquid.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it just depends on where I'm holding it, what form I'm holding it in, and how much of a risk do I think current market conditions are. We've seen where Bitcoin has repeatedly dropped when the market's crashed because people dump it to trying to raise cash or liquidity to cover short positions. I mean to cover margin positions. And some people may just drop it because it's gotten to be somewhat correlated with market crashes. I don't know. Not good data on that. But so if I sell it, it'll be short term. I'll buy back in. Because I think long term, I think over the next 3, 5, 10 years, it's going to be well ahead of where it is now. So to me, thinking what I'm thinking of the market, I would probably be more inclined to buy gold and crypto than I would stocks right now.
There you go. Let me go back a little bit. Started when women were allowed to serve in Congress. I think it started in the Garden of Eden. That's just me. Biden's the oldest. Clay will say sell 35% you have on market and buy 15% gold and some Bitcoin. Not terribly off.
Yeah.
Biden had a record and why election may have been rigged.
Yeah, like I say, with the Jane and I may be looking at different data, but from
You
the
and
data
Jane
I've
should collaborate on some of this stuff.
yeah, and from the data I have seen in some of the post-election results, like in Georgia, the Georgia Election Commission basically admitted that a lot of the mail-in ballots were fraudulent. So far, they've not prosecuted anybody. You've got the video, 2,000 mules of people carrying a stack of ballots and dumping them in a ballot box at 2 a.m. in the morning.
Not just one ballot box, but they would go to several in one night.
Yeah.
Because you can only do like 15 at a time or whatever. And they would take a picture of them putting them in the box.
So I'm like, I have a hard time personally believing that's completely legit. Some of the forensic evidence, like in Maricopa County, the discovery that yes, Dominion machines, the vote tallies can be altered over the internet. They are actually connected to the internet.
Mm-hmm.
There's just several things that we did not know in 2020 and 2021. And like I say, bottom line, just the turnout. The turnout was not huge or massive. I forget what the voting percentage of the population was supposedly, but I just have a hard time believing Biden, who couldn't get anybody to his rallies, who didn't have just a whole lot going for him.
He stayed in the basement.
Yeah. Got 81 million votes. I can't exactly prove it and take anybody to jail. I do note where, there have been a lot of attempted cases. The cases are thrown out due to not having standing, which boggles my mind. How can a voter not have standing to challenge voting fraud when they have evidence of it? I don't get that. But anyway, I'm not an attorney.
Two of us.
And I don't claim to be an attorney.
No.
But I would just like to see everything laid out. And I haven't seen that done. Pros and cons for the evidence presented. I think that needs to be done. Then we can honestly know what happened and how.
All right, moving on. Fraudulent mail-in ballots. Let's go, Brandon. I know, right? All right. Matt Walsh is correct. Aliens exist. I can't. Oh, there it is. You ready?
Yep.
Am I correct?
Yes.
So are you. Excellent.
Yeah, I remember I was talking to a friend who actually was a bank manager out in New Mexico, actually in Roswell.
Really?
And when he was a kid was when the Roswell UFO or whatever crashed.
Mm-hmm.
And he said within the hours, the Army had just a square mile sealed off and was flying in planes and, thousands of troops. And the Army said it was just a weather balloon. But he said before the Army got there, he and some of the other kids went and saw some of the wreckage. He said he didn't see any bodies or any major wreckage, but they picked up a piece of metal and took it back to a auto shop. And the guy there took the welding torch, the cutting torch to it, could not cut it. He also was holding it barehanded right
Like
after he had taken the heat to it, and it would not heat up.
That's crazy.
Yeah, he said, never seen anything. We had no known metals or compositions like that. And so if it was a weather balloon, it was a hell of a weather balloon. But it kept the Army damn interested for days.
Oh, yeah. All right. Next one. I don't know how long we're going to go on with this. Maybe till 10. But if a random stranger were being attacked by a shark in shallow water, I would jump in to help. Any of you guys want to give your answers here? Anyone? Hang on. I don't know where the piece of metal is now. Sky says no, absolutely not.
I think it's
Don't go in the ocean since I saw Charles. Do what?
I think his friend kept it, and I think, if I remember correctly, because this was in the 90s when I was talking to him and out there, I think the Army or something found out about it and came and took the piece.
All right. So question, or the statement, if a random stranger were being attacked by a shark in shallow water, I would jump in to help. Abso-freaking-lutely.
Yep.
I would beat that shark to bits. That's just me. All right, Erwin, don't be irritating Melissa. Now, all right. Liberty is not the ability to do what you wish, but the
Hold on
right.
a second.
Okay.
Hold on a second. Yeah, I'll say this. I don't necessarily hold some of the same positions that liberals do, but traditionally I have valued liberals because they have different perception. I think historically liberals are better at spotting problems. I think conservatives, what I would traditionally define as conservatives and liberals, conservatives have better solutions, but I think they work better together. I think they are complements. I think they're a left and a right hand. Your body is better with both hands. I just wish things weren't so pointed or hostile between the two. I think that's a big problem. I wish we
like me being sensitive and Clay being ornery. So we have to figure out how to mesh that together where we don't.
Well, there are things the sensitive Ellen wants me to handle and do that she does not feel comfortable doing.
Mm-hmm.
There's a time and a place. Trump and RFK are two modestly opposed individuals on economic and social policy. But the things that they agree on have brought them together. What unites us as a people should be greater than what divides us.
Yeah, I mean,
And so,
Clay is like, he was a bouncer. He's like the bravest person I know. And he and I will walk into a social situation, if it's like a neighborhood get together or whatever, and I will walk in and be like, I gotta go. I can't do this right now. And he's like, okay, breathe. Let's go. Not a problem. We're just gonna handle this. And I'm like, okay, that's cool. Because that, to me, that's a difficult situation. And for him, it's just like, I got you. No problem.
so
he could hang out and eat and do all the things, and it was just, and I don't always have that ability.
Yeah, I just think people are complements. I think people are part of the same body and they have different gifts, and that's okay. Sky, I was stung by a jellyfish and no one tried to take that thing off of me. We'll never enter the ocean again. Sky,
Oh my God.
if I knew you and you were stung by a jellyfish, I would pee on you.
Yeah, no one peed on you, says Melissa. I know, right?
Yeah, there's Melissa. No one peed on you, Sky? Yeah,
I would pee on you.
Yeah, anytime.
Well, that's kind of weird, but okay, we're not gonna
well, anytime she's stung, not anytime.
Anytime you want, honey. Clay would buy money market afterwards. All right, guys.
Yeah, apparently the urea in urine helps neutralize the sting.
Mm-hmm.
So it actually is a thing.
Yeah, I had to pee on my son once. That was kind of weird, but he got the one that wrapped around his leg.
Yeah, Portuguese.
Yeah, could have killed him.
Yeah, they're painful. Buy a money market after selling stock. Yeah, I would probably stick to a money market that invested in treasury securities. Like Fidelity has a short-term money market that buys T-bills only. Or I would just buy the T-bills. I'm just, buying T-bills actually. So keep rolling, 3-week, 6-week T-bills.
Yeah, as long as you're making money and not losing any.
Yeah, and I've been earning about 5%. So that's better to me than the risk. Now, like I say, I've done a few short-term things that have boosted my overall return. I don't even know what my overall return is so far this year, which is weird because I usually track it closer. But, S&P's done 18%. I'm probably a little behind that, but I'm okay with that because my risk is a whole hell of a lot lower. So my risk to reward ratio is pretty damn good.
We ready for the next?
Yep.
All right. Liberty is not the ability to do what you wish, but the right to do what you ought. I forget there's a 5-second delay. Same. Is that what you think?
Yep.
Yep.
I often say the greatest freedom we have is to choose who we serve. And, I believe that in a lot of different ways. Where, John Donne said, no man is an island.
Mm-hmm.
I believe there's a lot of truth in that.
I believe that too. I don't think that, just like we talk about America and freedom and all that, that doesn't mean you get to do whatever the hell you want to do. Which is a problem for me, considering all of the immigrants that are coming here and doing whatever they want and getting away with it scot-free, like beating up cops and eating cats, whatever. It just, Like you can't just do whatever you want to do. You have to do it with the right intention.
Yeah, rights have responsibilities,
Hmm.
and we too often forget that.
And people who come here just think, I mean, I'm sorry, but illegal aliens that come here just think that it's the land of the free. Okay, there's the home of the brave too. And we have fought for these freedoms, and it has not come at a cheap cost. You know?
All right, that it?
No? We got a couple more. I told you we go to
Okay.
10. We got 12 more minutes. Okay, a hot dog is a sandwich.
Melissa, I serve pug. We
Not to Haitians, honey. No.
That's not the worst choice there.
Not to Haitians. You don't I know you serve pug. I get that.
Not serve pug. What was the question? I don't even remember the question.
A hot dog is a sandwich.
Oh,
Oh, I forgot. I'm doing yours.
yes. Hot
You think
dog
it
is a
is.
sandwich by
It
any
is not a
standard.
sandwich.
It may not be a
It is
sandwich
not.
you like,
It's
but
a
it is a
sandwich.
sandwich.
It is a piece of meat between two buns I'm allergic to, so no.
That's a sandwich.
Mm-hmm.
But are the Roswell aliens illegal aliens? Well, they were definitely vetted by the military.
Sorry. I've still got fruit flies.
So whether or not that counts, I don't know.
All right. Today, college is usually a waste of time and money. I believe that. Do you?
Yes.
So we're both right.
Um, I was talking to some, some girl the other week ago, and she was complaining about, jobs and only being offered $15 an hour. And I was like, I understand your concern and issue. I said, if, what you ought to do is go down to that gender studies factory down the road and get a job down there. They pay much more.
Oh, good God.
I'm going to get fired one of these days.
I know you are. Okay, next one. I own cryptocurrency. Well, you can turn that sideways. I sort of own it by
Yeah,
proxy.
you do.
So there's that. Being an autodidactic. Learning for yourself. There you go. That's better.
That's a process that everybody ought to do for their entire life. Now, if you need technical skills like, an accounting degree, a finance degree, computer degree, engineering degree, degrees help. But
you can learn a lot of stuff on your own.
Oh yeah, you can. And I encourage a lot of people to do that. And a lot of the trades are extremely productive and profitable. You can electricians.
The whole Adobe Creative Suite, I taught myself.
Yeah. But
I mean,
there's
you
a
can
lot of
do
things you can do and be very, very successful without a college degree. So college is not for everybody. And I believe we oversell it and overpush it. The thing is, college should be a higher academic experience. And with the product we're getting out of the secondary and primary schools, we spend too much time teaching remedial level subjects. Plus, a lot of the degrees, there's very little or no demand for. So we graduate a bunch of kids with a big student loan that they can't afford to pay. Never will be, probably. That's ridiculous. Utterly, completely, totally ridiculous.
What is this? Re-elections, but takes 6 to 12 months to prove and need to install a president, so faulty system. Oh, yeah. Become a plumber. They make a fortune. Plumber, electrician, HVAC. You can take an HVAC class here for like what, a summer?
It
And
takes a little longer than that, but yeah, there you have to take a bunch of classes a year.
yeah, but it's
And,
like, I mean, you have to like do re-education or whatever.
and then
CE.
you work with the company kind of, at a lower level position for a year.
Oh God, yeah, you can make a ton of money. Jane
Yeah.
is correct. She is. I mean, they make a ton. Anything that you can do that is like a solid skill, you're gonna make money in. Like, I wish my children were more interested in doing stuff like that, but their dad has another. He wants them to go to a 4-year school because his whole family's in education, and that's fine, whatever. But like, come out with something that you're actually going to use. Underwater basket weaving is not like something that's going to make any difference. All right.
Yeah.
Next, I would play Twister with platonic friends. Absolutely. Why not?
Yeah.
Um,
The answer of this is, of course, a resounding yes.
yes, absolutely. Donate,
So,
join, send a super chat. I mean, this is like, we're an hour past my usual bedtime, y'all. I'm going on 3 hours. You know, that's a lot.
yeah,
Okay.
we take checks.
Or Venmo. Okay. Sex is meant for marriage. No, you're going to say shit. Where's my other one? I've dropped them all. Hang on.
Oh, geez.
The dogs have knocked them all off the desk.
Poor dogs get blamed for everything. You'd be wrong.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh. That would shock me. All right. I think it is. I think it's meant for people. Ow. I got a hair somewhere. I can't get it off there. You know, I think that the current generations, hang on, be a good job for mermaids. Absolutely. Yeah. Um, it is meant for marriage. Yeah, but I think that the younger generations have just taken it to.
The whole society has. We
We've
have lost.
sexualized everything.
Yeah, and we don't value the marriage bond
Enough.
as much as we used to 50 or 100 years ago. Flip side is some people would be stuck in horrible marriages, and there was a lot of pressure on them to stay in it.
Yeah.
I can't advocate that necessarily either.
No, I mean, if you're miserable in your marriage or you're being abused or there's some major issue that you cannot work out, then you should walk away from it. However, you just don't get to sleep with anyone um, just for fun, for shits and giggles. That is not how it's supposed to go.
Yeah.
Correct. What? Ellen now disclosing insider Clay and Emma. Oh. Okay. Next one. Life.
I'm having trouble connecting to the internet. Take a look at the help section in your Alexa app.
I'm sorry. The new mesh network. I didn't connect it. All right. Life begins at conception. Absolutely. You?
Yeah. Biologically, there's no question or debate. Scientifically, there's no question or debate. The only real question is in people's minds is, at what point does life have value?
As soon as
Some
it
people argue it doesn't have, there have been some people that argue that you shouldn't declare babies after they're born. You should not declare them human until 6 or 12 weeks so that you can do a good diagnostic, see if they have any genetic disorders, any other complications, that kind of thing. So we are increasingly devaluing human life.
Well, it's like if you took cake mix and eggs and milk and whatever the hell goes into it, you put it, in the oven in a pan, or in the pan in the oven, and then you turn it on and somebody came out and threw it out on the floor. It's like, well, that's my cake. It's like, no, it's not.
Yeah.
But it was going to be.
And this is one of those issues that, a lot of people will disagree on, and that's okay. I believe each and every individual is of infinite value. And I mean, that was when my daughter was born, I could look at her and know immediately she was worth more than any blade of grass. She was worth more than any worm. She was worth more than any animal. I would have done anything and everything I could to protect her from harm from anyone else, much less anything else on this earth. And, I still look at everyone being of infinite value. And I think
even me retarded.
especially.
Yeah, thanks.
And I think society losing that perspective has caused loss of manners, has caused loss of respect for other people and their property, their profession. I just think all of society is. I think society is degrading. We are not improving. We're not becoming more civilized. We're becoming less civilized, and I think a lot of that has to do with changes in culture and values. Again, virtue and freedom.
Well, people ask me about like the week thing, like how many weeks is the right time for an abortion. And I'm like, I was 5 weeks pregnant, which means the actual insemination, whatever, when I got pregnant, when the egg was fertilized, was between 2 and 3 weeks, and I knew immediately something was wrong with me. So I went to the OB, and they did an internal ultrasound, and I could see the heartbeat right then. It was like a little peanut. It was cute. It had little, tiny little arms and legs. And it's like, they're like, you're 5 weeks pregnant. I'm like, 5 weeks? And I was like, where do you measure that from? They're like, from the time of your last period. And I was like, oh, so only like 2 to 3 weeks has this little child been a thing. And still could see a heartbeat, still could see the development. And I'm like, wow, this is because my ex-husband wanted me to get an abortion. And I was just like, no, this is a little human. It's a little baby human. Can't do it. But that's just me. It's a life. It's living. It's going to be a person. And that was all that I needed to see. I guess I should shut up.
We are repeating a lot of the things that Rome did in its later stages, with immigration, with government handouts, with a focus more and more on society seeking their own enjoyment and pleasure, declining morals, manners, that kind of thing, greater affluence. I think oftentimes greater affluence in society is almost a social evil, because the richer you are, the more you desire riches. and your focus turns more towards that and away from things which ultimately may be more important. Now, I've been poor. I've been rich and I've been poor. And if I had my druthers, I'd rather be rich. But there are values and things you appreciate more when you're poor. And I hope I still remember those and never lose those. And I would like to see more encouragement of that versus a gross materialism.
Yeah, I think just valuing other people, valuing their opinions,
Good
having
night, Sky.
conversations. Good night, Sky. Not having angry discussions or angry yell matches with everyone. If you can have a peaceful conversation about something that you disagree about, I think that is like the utmost of intelligence, the utmost of enlightenment, the utmost of being a real human and being able to do that. I mean, I think so many people now just yell and scream and, you know, I don't like that, I don't want that, so you're wrong, you're a this, that, and the other. I can't. Okay, this is Clay's way of saying, Ellen, shut up. It's time to go to bed. For the first time ever, I have stayed up so freaking late, besides the debate.
No, I think people are getting, it's getting a little late. People are signing off, and we're starting to ramble a little bit. I think it's about time. So I
All
do
right,
want to
guys.
thank
We
you
love
all for being with you. We do love you. We have enjoyed being with you. We appreciate you being with us. And again, got questions, send them to us. We look forward to talking with you again Tuesday night.
Absolutely.
Until then, our time is up. We thank you for yours. Good night. Blessings to you.
Good night.